Okay guys, in today's video we are going to have a little bit of fun. I am going to go through what I think is the best Space Marine miniature released in each and every edition of Warhammer 40k, from Rogue Trader all the way up into 11th edition. So it should be fun to have a look back at some of these awesome miniatures and to decide what I think is the best one. Before I get into it though, a big huge thank you to everyone out there that continues to support the channels, liking, commenting, watching, and of course subscribing. That is absolutely crucial. So thanks everyone out there who has done that. And everyone out there who goes the extra mile supports over on Patreon. You guys literally keep the lights on and the cameras rolling. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys so much. If you want to get involved with the Patreon, it's linked down below. There's a million reasons to get involved. Extra videos, extra podcast episodes. There's a private Discord server, and we do monthly giveaways. This month we are giving away an Armageddon box set. So if you want to be on the chance of winning a full Armageddon box set sent anywhere in the world at my expense, all I need to do is be signed up to Patreon at any tier. Okay, that out of the way, let's dive in and let's start looking at Rogue Trader. Okay, for Rogue Trader, in my humble opinion, the best Space Marine miniature released in that edition, if it is an edition, is the Space Marine Captain with Terminator honors from 91. He is an absolutely stunning pose, so much so that he has been recreated not twice, but 3 times. Every kind of 5 editions he seems to be redone because he's so popular and so nice. So he is definitely up there with that. And I think one of the most special things about that miniature is the fact that if you look at the body of work in the same era, it's pretty awful. And I don't mean awful as in it's badly done. It's just good for its time. Certain sculptors had a certain level, and obviously those levels have increased and developed over time with skills, and those skills have been passed on and shared and refined. But this was the kind of beginning of it all. And I think it just stood out amongst the rest. And I'd imagine that a lot of the other sculptors in the studio around those times would have seen that model come off somebody's desk and been like, oh my God, so that's what Space Marines are meant to look like. So that's what I think. There was only really one choice for me for 2nd edition, and that is 1995, the release of the first real Dreadnought. I know we had the old version of it that looked like RTB01, or no, sorry, looked like Ed 209 from RoboCop. That was fine. You can call that a Space Marine Dreadnought if you want. I don't. It's a weird precursor thing. When the first real lead Dreadnought, that box Dreadnought came out, it changed the game, and I have been absolutely in love with Dreadnoughts ever since. I have dozens and dozens of them, and I just will never stop doing Dreadnoughts. I love it. So to finally have that model come into being, knowing what it will mean for model kits coming out for the next 30 years, it really is something special for me. 3rd edition seen the release of many incredible kits, but there's definitely a standout model for me. And before I get into that model, I just want an honorable mention for the first real plastic tactical squad. I know we got RTB01 Space Marines back in the day and they were fine, but this is the first kind of what Space Marines are going to look like for the next 30 years. A kit that I had bought dozens and dozens of times to create dozens of armies, and it just lives in my heart and soul. So the tactical squad is definitely up there with something that's really awesome. But once again, the 1999 Space Marine Captain with Stormbolter and Power Sword. He originally came out by himself, and then he was kind of became part of that original Metal Command Squad. He is incredible. I still own my version of him to this day, and he is still fielded in games to this day. That's how much I love that model. I think he stands up from 1999 to 2026, and I still think he is a 10 out of 10 miniature. 4th edition. So in 2004, there was a very special box set released, which was the Army Deal. And inside that Army Deal was a very special Space Marine. He was only ever available in that box set. I would argue that this could be the rarest Space Marine that Games Workshop has ever released, because he was never brought out in a made to order. He was never brought out singularly. There was never another option to buy him except for this giant army box back in the day. And that is the Space Marine Veteran. He had the awesome gigantic plume helmet, a Stormbolter in one hand and a Gladius down by his side. I in fact repainted one of them to match my Imperial Fist army only a couple of months ago. Once again, that model was my favorite model of all time for many, many years. Probably all the way up until like 8th edition, it was my favorite model of all time. So I think he is once again a 10 out of 10 miniature. Going into 5th edition, and it's kind of weird looking back at this because obviously I worked in Games Workshop for 15 years, from basically the end of 4th edition all the way through 10th edition basically. And I was around for all these releases. I'm the one who sold all of these releases. And it's only when you go back and look at them as a kind of like a condensed pile of miniatures, do you realize that some editions were fairly lackluster. And 5th edition was definitely that. There was very few things to choose from, as goes characters, as goes special, like nothing was amazing in my opinion. But we did get one standout unit. We got two, but one of them I think stood out more for me, and that was the first iteration of the Stern Guard. That squad was absolutely incredible. Each one of those models was a character unto themselves. The Sergeant was a 10 out of 10 model, and they're absolutely fantastic. So although I think 5th edition as a whole was fairly poor for Space Marine releases, we did get Stern Guard and Vanguard, Stern Guard being the standout for me, so that will be my choice. Into 6th edition, and I feel the same as 5th edition. I feel like it's a fairly lackluster edition. Unfortunately, we had the horrible transition between Metal into Finecast, which we all know was a terrible time for characters in the Games Workshop universe. We got more fails than we did successes with Finecast, which means that even some models which you think would be absolutely incredible, I still don't want to own. My standout is the Lord Executioner. He came out with another 3 other captains, making 4 in total. The other 3 I think were fairly poor sculpts entirely. The Lord Executioner was a fairly decent, maybe like an 8 out of 10, but that once again will be pushed down even further because he never was released in metal, and I just don't want to own a Finecast version of him. So I've been offered a free version of him before and just simply turned it down. Don't want it in my collection, don't want to know about it. So yeah. 7th edition kind of brought it back on form. A lot of characters started coming out in plastic and they were incredible, and that obviously is going to pave the way for all the incredible Space Marine characters to come out in plastic from then until now. For me, the standout for 7th edition was definitely the Terminator Chaplain in, or the Space Marine Chaplain in Terminator armor. He is unbelievable as a model. He was quite hard to get your hands on at the time. He was exclusive for some reason or other. I can't remember why he was exclusive, but he was perfect. And the thing that makes him even more kind of exceptional is since his release, 2 more plastic Terminator Chaplains have come out, and he is still miles above them. So they're progressing with tools and techniques and skills, and they still can't replicate how unbelievable that miniature was. So for me, there was no question in my mind what was the best model of 7th edition. The Space Marine Chaplain Terminator armor. Mwah, beautiful. And then we come into 8th edition, and that's where everything changed. Because of course, 8th edition was the launch of Dark Imperium and the introduction of the Primaris Space Marine. I know Primaris Space Marines are not for everyone, but you're wrong. They're amazing. I love them. I'm so happy they exist. And once again, that has been reaffirmed by going down this research rabbit hole of looking into it, seeing the amount of miniatures that were released for Space Marines from like 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. And then we got the explosion in 8th edition with Primaris Marines, and seeing the amount of new kits and new characters that came out. I am just so happy that they exist and that they continue to bring out awesome new Primaris kits literally every single year. It makes me really happy and joyous. I look forward to all of those releases. So with this, I can't pick a single miniature. So I'm going to go for 2 runners up, and then I will deliver what I think is the best one, which I don't think many people will have thought of as the best miniature, but for me, it's what I think. Okay, so the second runner up for me is the Vanguard Lieutenant. He's the guy in Phobos armor, diving forward. He's throwing a smoke grenade. We have never seen a Space Marine in a dynamic pose like this before. And once again, it just changed the way we think about Space Marines, how they move, how they fight, how they act. And obviously this paves the way for things like all the Phobos Marines, all the other units that kind of go with him, the Invictus Warsuit. It's just an incredible set of Space Marines. And like I said, he changed the game for me. The second runner-up, and one that might be surprising for a lot of people, is the Redemptor Dreadnought. People probably thought that I was going to make that my favorite thing, since I've got, I think, 15 fully painted Redemptor Dreadnought chassis dreadnoughts now, and I have no intention of stopping. I love them so much. But I understand that it's not everybody's favorite thing. It is just a big square dreadnought, and maybe it's my personal preference. So, although I think it's perfect, and I love it, and I will never stop doing them, my favorite one is actually Lieutenant Amulus of 2018. This was another limited edition collectible miniature. He's in a fairly stoic, static pose, but he just looks like a joy to paint. He is absolutely perfectly posed. I think he is amazing. People may have issue with that. There was certainly a hell of a lot of incredible models released in the 8th edition of Warhammer 40k. And please don't hesitate to put in the comments below if you think there's a more standout miniature for any edition. Please do say, for 2nd edition, I thought the best one was actually, give me an opportunity to go have a look at them and decide for myself. Maybe we can have a little bit of a discourse in the comments. I know Amulet isn't going to be everybody's kind of cup of tea, especially since we just talked about how the runner-up was this incredibly dynamic, incredible looking Space Marine. And then we have this standing still, just pristine model, Space Marine helmet under his arm, sword down by his side, just gorgeous. I love him. For 9th edition, once again, we have 2 runners-up. The first one is the Brutalis Dreadnought. Love the idea that they're just giving us Assault Dreadnought like we're Blood Angels players, but we're not. So that just makes me very, very happy. And then, of course, the other runner-up on that is the Vanguard Veterans. There's no way that I can... Sorry, the Blade Guard Veterans, not the Vanguard, sorry. The Blade Guard Veterans are an absolutely incredible set of miniatures. At first, I was a bit... The only thing that kind of put me off them a little bit was the concept of them being released in squads of 3. It was kind of the first time we've seen Games Workshop move towards that format of having these elite units be smaller. Now, of course, it's commonplace. Almost every army has these elite versions. Like, you know, Death Guard has normal Terminators, and then they've got the Blightlord Terminators, which are, or the Death Shred Terminators, which are 3-man squads, or, you know, Wolf Guard are now 3-man, or the company here, like the champions for Dark Angels are 3-man. So they've kind of moved towards that format now, but originally I was like, I would have much preferred a 5-man squad of those guys, but you know, the 3-man is still incredible. They're these just utter killers, and yeah, so they're amazing. But the standout one for me, which once again might surprise people, is the 2022 limited edition Company Champion miniature. The one holding the sword in a kind of awesome pose blade straight out. It's been converted and added to my Company Hero squad as my champion, so I deploy him in every game I play with my Imperial Fists. Once again, we're definitely moving into that phase of Games Workshop where there's just so many incredible miniatures that were limited edition, which it's kind of cool to get your hands on one and be like, I have this rare model in my collection. But then you also feel bad that people can't go back and just get their hands on it or order it, or people that missed out on it. That's kind of crappy. But yeah, I think he's an unbelievable miniature. And like I said, I'm very grateful to actually possess 2 of them. So yeah. Let me know if you managed to get your hands on one. Going into 10th edition, the 2 runners up that I have are the redesign of the plastic Terminators. For a long time, I was concerned that the aggressor armor pattern was the replacement to Terminators, and I wasn't a really big fan of aggressors, and that could have been the main reason. Aggressors are fine by themselves, but if someone is telling me that aggressors are what Terminators are going to look like, then I got upset. I didn't want that. I want Terminators to stay Terminators, especially as an Imperial Fist player. That's super important to me. So since they just redesigned Terminators and they're just exactly the same, they're just bigger and chunkier and sharper and nicer, incredible. So I was really happy to see that. The second runner-up for 10th edition was the Raven Guard special character Ethan Shan. Like, what a model. And this is in the same edition where new Lysander comes out. And Lysander is my favorite Space Marine character of all time. But Lysander is exactly what you would expect a new Lysander to look like. So when you saw him, you were like, yep, that's exactly what I picture in my head. Bigger, bolder, better. Love it. Perfect. And then Ethan Shan came out and just changed the game. Like, what a miniature. Never seen a Space Marine look like that before. Definitely changes the idea of what Raven Guard are going to look like in my head. In fact, pushed me so hard that I've actually started a small Raven Guard army just to include him and Shrike in the force. Incredible. But the winner of the 10th edition for me is the Company Heroes set. Every single one of those 5 miniatures is a standout. They're so beautiful. They obviously are an upgrade to the old Space Marine Command Squad. And back in the day, the old Space Marine Command Squad had very little purpose on the battlefield. There was no like aura buffs. There was no this and like changes your gameplay. It was just a 5-man squad with all different weapons that weren't particularly good at shooting, weren't particularly good at fighting, were very expensive, and they just didn't really find their place. Apart from being very aesthetically pleasing, they weren't very good. Whereas the Company Heroes is always incredible in combat, always incredible at shooting, gives aura buffs to your army, looks incredible, and isn't a million points. So it just ticks all the boxes for me. I feel when in every game I play with my Imperial Fists, originally purely for aesthetic purposes, but then every single game they surprise me with how good they perform. And I think they're absolutely incredible. So if you, for any reason, have ever avoided buying a Company Heroes box set, I implore you to reconsider that and go and get yourself one. I promise. The simple Space Marine in there with the bionic arm, pointing the bolt gun. After you've constructed that model and hold him in your hands for a few minutes just staring at him, I promise me, you will not find a better Space Marine ever. And of course, that brings us to 11th edition. Now, obviously, 11th edition will probably be a very different thing by the end of 11th edition, and we're in the very beginning of it now. And I'm going to give two options here, because one is the awesome new Cronus model that was announced, I think, yesterday or the day before. The new Ultramarines character. He's wearing the beautiful new Ultramarines kind of veteran armor that we've seen on some of the other miniatures before. He's got an axe in one hand and a power sword in the other. He's just incredible. Like, incredible. But is he cheating because he's technically not out yet? I don't know. So I'm going to push him to one side. I'm going to call him the runner-up for now, even though I think he's a flawless miniature, and say that my favorite 11th edition release so far, which is really just picking something you really like out of the Armageddon box set, for me is the humble land speeder finally being redone. I had so many land speeders in 4th and 5th edition in my army, and I've waited for them to be redone for so long, and now they are. I think this is a 10 out of 10 model. I, in fact, have secured 2 more of them. So this will be a squadron of 3 flying around, delivering melta shots into enemy. And I love it. I love it. I love it. And considering how many other incredible Space Marine models exist in the Armageddon box set, that may surprise people that this is my standout, but there it is. So that is my favorite miniature from every single edition, from Rogue Trader all the way up until 11th edition. I would love to know your thoughts and feelings on my list in the comments below. Please let me know if you think I've had some catastrophic mistake and there is a better miniature out there that I didn't mention that definitely deserves its place, and then I will get on that as soon as possible. The other thing I'm considering doing, the only reason I'm fighting against it is I like to live in a world that I kind of keep as positive as humanly possible. These videos make me happy because I just get to talk about the things that I like. But the opposite side to a coin of this video is I go and I do the worst Space Marine miniature released in every edition of Warhammer, from Rogue Trader to 11th edition. So if you guys are curious to see that list and this video, please do let me know in the comments below as well. Thank you guys so much for sticking around to this longer than normal video. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.